The dog wouldn't stop scratching. Not at the door, not at the walls, but at a locked drawer no one had touched in weeks. And what was inside that drawer would unravel the deadliest secret this hospital ever hid. The air in the ER was stale, recycled one too many times through humming vents and flickering fluorescence. At 2:17 a.m., the trauma bay at Cedar Ridge Memorial was unusually quiet, a rare lull in the chaos. No ambulances, no beeping monitors. Just the soft hum of medical machinery and the occasional creak from an old ceiling tile. Officer Jenna Brooks stepped inside with Max, her 4-year-old German Shepherd canine, by her side. She wasn't there for an investigation. Not yet. She'd just wrapped up a welfare check at a nearby trailer park, and Max had helped coax a frightened 7-year-old out from under a bed. They brought him to the ER for a quick evaluation. "Let's just wait in here for a bit," Jenna said softly, patting Max's head. "Quiet shift." Max trotted in, ears perked and nose working the air like a vacuum. Jenna sat in the empty trauma room while a nurse prepped the boy next door. Max circled the space, sniffing around a rolling crash cart, the edge of a gurney, and then he stopped. The medicine cabinet. He placed one paw against the metal drawer. Then another. Then came the scratching. At first, Jenna didn't think much of it. Max scratched things all the time. Back doors, storage closets, anything hiding food or something remotely interesting. But this was different. He wasn't whining or pacing. He was locked in, staring dead on at the small silver handle as if he knew exactly what he was after. "Hey!" Jenna called out to a nurse passing by. "Do you know what's in that drawer?" The nurse barely glanced. "That? It's just the backup crash kit. Nobody uses that one anymore. It's mostly empty." She didn't stop walking. Max wasn't buying it. His ears twitched. His body stiffened. His claws raked again and again at the drawer, tail frozen midair. Jenna leaned forward. "Max, down." He didn't move. She knelt next to him, reaching for the drawer. Locked. Of course it was. She tried not to make a scene. This wasn't her turf, and she wasn't there on duty. Just a cop waiting for paperwork to clear so she could get a scared kid back home. But then a thought hit her like a low rumble. Max was a certified narcotics detection K9, and this wasn't just mindless scratching. It was alert behavior. Jenna straightened up. She asked for the attending nurse again, this time with a little more edge in her voice. "Can someone open this cabinet? My dog's trained to alert on controlled substances, and he's clearly alerting." Another nurse came over, annoyed but curious. "You think there's something illegal in there?" "I don't know, but he's never done this without reason." The nurse fumbled for her keys, muttering something about overreacting. She unlocked the drawer. It slid open with a metallic groan. Inside, several bottles, vials, sealed packets, all labeled, all appearing routine, until the nurse's face changed. "What the hell?" The drawer, supposedly unused, contained several anesthesia vials. But they weren't full. Some were clearly tampered with. Not visibly broken, not empty, but half full and recapped. One bottle, lid cracked, looked cloudy inside. Another had no label at all. The nurse stepped back like she'd touched a live wire. "Jenna," she whispered, "this drawer's supposed to be empty. It's off inventory. These aren't even tracked anymore." Max whined softly, pawing once more before finally sitting. That moment, that quiet, lingering second when everyone in the room stared at those vials, marked the beginning of something no one could have predicted. A hidden thread in an unraveling sweater, a whisper of something bigger, something deadly. Just a few hours later, hospital administrators were informed. The head pharmacist launched an internal review. And Jenna? She wasn't letting it go. She'd worked enough drug diversion cases to know this wasn't accidental. Vials don't go missing on their own. Not when they're supposed to be sealed, counted, tracked to the milligram. And most of all, Max had never been wrong. She made a call to her sergeant and was officially assigned to the case. The following day, Jenna started pulling records, deaths, incidents, anomalies, from the past 90 days. One file stood out. Celia Harmon, age 56, died after a routine hernia repair. No prior conditions. Another, Tyrese Vaughn, 32, passed from cardiac arrest after a minor orthopedic procedure. Still another, Miguel Soto, 47, died in the ER, unexplained respiratory collapse. Different doctors, different nurses, but all died within 30 minutes of being administered anesthesia. All of them. At this point in the story, if you're hooked by how our four-legged hero sniffed out the first clue in what might be a deadly black market ring, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more real-life stories where animals make the difference no one else could. Every click helps us keep telling the stories that deserve to be heard. By day 3, Jenna had confirmed the truth no one wanted to face. Someone had been diluting anesthesia meds and resealing the vials. That meant two things. Patients were dying because their doses were off. Someone was pocketing the rest, either for personal use or for profit. Hospital staff tried to brush it off as a storage mistake. Someone might have accidentally put old stock in the wrong drawer, but that drawer had been locked. There were only 3 people with keys, and one of them had recently transferred to nights, right around the same time the fatal overdoses began. Max's behavior had cracked the lid on something much larger. Jenna requested security footage. 2 hours of video from the trauma bay were missing. Technical error, the IT guy said, but his voice shook. Jenna could hear it. That's when she started digging into the black market side of things, because she'd seen this pattern before. She knew how anesthesia could fetch thousands on the street, especially the powerful ones like fentanyl and etomidate. She also knew the hospital's loss prevention reports had quietly increased in the past few months, and she knew Max had smelled something that wasn't supposed to be there. What they didn't know yet was who was behind it. Not just a thief, not just someone stealing drugs, but someone whose carelessness or greed had led to real deaths. And whoever it was, they were still working at Cedar Ridge, still walking those halls, still thinking no one would ever figure it out. But that was before a 4-legged officer started scratching at the truth. And now? Now it was just a matter of time. There's something about early morning in a hospital. It's not quiet, not exactly, but it's a different kind of noise. The distant hum of machines, murmured conversations behind privacy curtains, the faint beeping of monitors signaling life, or sometimes the absence of it. Jenna Brooks had been up for 26 hours. She leaned against the wall in the ER hallway, a steaming cup of burnt coffee cradled in her hands. Max lay curled at her feet, finally asleep but still twitching in his dreams. His work had triggered an avalanche, and now she was trying to stay upright as it rolled. "Hey, Officer Brooks." Jenna turned her head. It was Ellie, the night janitor. Mid-40s, hard-working, always in earbuds and a hoodie that said "Number 1 Aunt." She looked uneasy. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" Ellie asked, glancing around like someone might be watching. Jenna nodded. "Sure." They stepped into a quiet storage room, the kind where old gurneys and busted monitors went to die. Ellie wrung her hands. "I wasn't going to say anything, but I saw something last week. Didn't think it mattered until you and your dog started digging around." Jenna put her coffee down. "Go on." Ellie took a breath. "It was around 3 a.m. I was mopping the West Wing near Trauma Bay 4. Place was dead. No patients, no nurses. Then I saw someone come out of that room. They were in scrubs, but I couldn't see their badge. Kinda short, fast-moving. Had a duffel bag. Didn't think much of it. Figured they forgot something." Jenna leaned in. "What kind of duffel?" "Black, like a gym bag. Looked heavy, though. You see where they went? Locker room. But here's the weird thing. They were back out less than a minute later. Empty-handed." Jenna felt the hair rise on the back of her neck. "Can you show me which locker room?" 10 minutes later, Jenna and Max stood outside the staff locker area near the west exit. The hallway smelled like bleach and lemon cleaner. Max perked up immediately, nose twitching as he scanned the air. Inside the room, rows of narrow lockers lined the walls. Most were locked. "Search," Jenna commanded. Max moved like a switch had flipped in his brain. He sniffed low and fast, weaving between benches and open lockers. Then, he stopped. Right in front of locker 212, he sat. That was his alert posture. Jenna nodded and pulled on latex gloves. She flagged down hospital security and asked for the master key. After a minute of huffing and questions, they popped it open. The door creaked wide. Inside, a half-crushed duffel bag. "Black, zipped," Max whined, then growled softly. Jenna knelt down, heart thumping. Inside the bag were 3 things. Empty anesthesia vials, about 20 of them, labeled and unlabeled, some shattered. Disposable gloves, stained faintly red. A prepaid burner phone still powered on. She reached in, careful not to disturb the scene more than necessary. The phone buzzed in her hand. New text from Cash Buyer. "Need new batch by Thurs, payment waiting." Jenna felt a chill crawl down her spine. Whoever was running this scheme wasn't just stealing to use. They were distributing. And they weren't done. Later that afternoon, Jenna sat with a hospital administrator and Detective Marcus Lee, her longtime colleague from narcotics. Photos of the duffel bag's contents were spread out across the table. Marcus was the kind of guy who wore his fatigue like armor. Pressed shirt, coffee-stained folder under one arm, always tired but always watching. "This is bigger than a few missing vials," he said. "We've got diverted meds, falsified patient charts, and now possibly a trafficking link." Jenna nodded. "And Max was the first one to catch it. He's the reason we even opened that cabinet." The administrator, a thin man named Harold Levine with a permanent frown, looked rattled. "You understand what this means for the hospital, right?" he asked. "If this goes public, we're facing lawsuits, media frenzy, even shutdown threats." "Then help us handle it before it gets worse," Jenna said flatly. "I need access to badge entry logs for that locker room, medical supply inventory records, and a list of all employees with access to anesthesia storage." Levine hesitated, but finally nodded. "I'll have my assistant send you what we can." Jenna added, "We also need full footage from the staff hallway near locker room C." Levine blinked. "We don't have it." "Why not?" He shifted uncomfortably. "That wing's cameras have been down for a few weeks. Maintenance flagged it, but we haven't gotten around to repairs." Jenna and Marcus exchanged a look. "Classic." "Convenient," Marcus muttered. That evening, Jenna took Max to the park behind the precinct. The sky was lavender, the air thick with the smell of barbecue from someone grilling nearby. "You know, buddy," she said, rubbing his ears, "you might have just stopped a serial killer in Scrubs." Max tilted his head like he understood. Her phone buzzed. New message from the hospital admin's office. She opened the attachment. Badge entry logs from the locker room. 4 names. 2 checked out. Clean records, solid alibis. 1 was on vacation. The last, Nurse Trisha Dolan. Worked trauma nights. 5 years at Cedar Ridge. No criminal record. Glowing evaluations. But Jenna remembered her. Quiet, fast-moving, always avoided small talk. And according to the logs, she accessed the locker room at 2:57 a.m., 7 minutes before Ellie saw someone leave Trauma Bay 4 with a duffel bag. That couldn't be a coincidence. Jenna pulled up a picture of Trisha. In her mid-30s, brunette, sharp jawline. She texted Marcus. "Jenna, got a name, Trisha Dolan. She's our next stop." The next morning, Jenna walked into Cedar Ridge with a warrant and a team. Trisha Dolan wasn't on the schedule that night, but her locker was. They waited until shift change. Then quietly, calmly, Jenna asked Trisha to step into a private consultation room. Trisha looked confused. "Is something wrong?" "We just need to clear up a few things," Jenna said, gesturing to the chair. Inside the room, Marcus laid out the photos, the bag, the burner phone, the vials. Trisha's eyes flickered only for a second. "I don't know what this is," she said. "That's not mine." "Locker 212, Marcus said. "You accessed it. Badge logs don't lie." "I share that locker." "With who?" She paused. "No one." Jenna leaned forward. "Trisha, we have you on internal records. We know about the vials. We know about the texts. The only way this goes easier for you is if you start telling the truth. Right now." Trisha went pale. Then her voice broke. "I didn't sell them. I swear. I was just supposed to collect and hand them off. I didn't know people were dying. They told me it was safe, just a few vials no one would miss. They said the hospital over-orders anyway." "Who's they?" Jenna asked. But Trisha clammed up. "We'll get the rest," Marcus said grimly. "We always do." Back in the parking lot, Jenna sat on the hood of her cruiser while Max lay beside her. The sun was high, casting hard shadows across the pavement. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Trisha was just a pawn. The burner phone proved there were more. Maybe someone higher up. Maybe someone distributing to other clinics, other towns. But the secret wasn't safe anymore. And all it had taken to crack it open? A scratch. A bark. And a dog who never stopped until someone listened. 3 days after Trisha Dolan's arrest, Cedar Ridge Memorial looked the same on the surface. Sterile white walls, hum of machines, medical staff moving quickly with clipped, practiced steps. But to Officer Jenna Brooks, it felt different now. It felt tainted. The investigation had hit a dangerous middle ground. The suspect was in custody, but the truth wasn't all there yet. Trisha wasn't the mastermind. Jenna knew that in her bones. She'd seen true guilt before, and Trisha had the panic of someone in over her head, not someone running a ring, which meant someone else was still walking these halls, wearing a badge, clocking in, smiling at patients, while selling drugs that left innocent people dead. Max trotted beside her through the hospital corridor, tail low but alert. Nurses smiled when they passed, and a few even bent down to pet him. He always brought comfort, ironic, considering the storm he'd helped stir up. Jenna had learned one thing early in her career. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it looks like your favorite neighbor or a respected coworker. And sometimes it hides behind routine. That's what she was chasing now, patterns. If they couldn't rely on video footage, they needed to dig deeper into the rhythm of the hospital itself. Charts, logs, rotation schedules. Somewhere in that mass of data, someone had made a mistake, and Jenna intended to find it. By noon, she was back in a windowless records room buried beneath 3 floors of administration offices. A young IT tech named Cameron sat beside her, tapping rapidly on a hospital-issued laptop. Sticky notes with color codes and arrows covered the desk like a detective's crime board. "I've sorted all ER death records from the last 90 days, Cameron said. Then cross-checked them with the medication logs. It's not super clean, people forget to document or they enter stuff late, but there's a flag." Jenna leaned in. "A flag?" He turned the screen toward her. A spreadsheet full of names, columns of timestamps, and red marks. "There's a nurse named Darren Blake, worked night shift. He signed off on nearly every single anesthesia dosage given in these flagged cases. 36 patients over 8 weeks. Jenna narrowed her eyes. "That's not protocol, right? One nurse shouldn't be handling all of that." "No, typically it's rotated, even with staff shortages. Why didn't his name come up before?" Cameron shrugged. "He was off duty the week of the drawer discovery, and his locker wasn't near the one you found. Smart, clean, careful, until now." Jenna spent the next 4 hours combing through Darren Blake's record. 5 years at Cedar Ridge, 2 years at a trauma center in Albuquerque before that. No red flags, no disciplinary actions, stellar reviews. But something didn't sit right. She decided to do what most people don't anymore, just talk to people. She started with the break room. Nurses, med techs, cleaning staff. Nothing aggressive, just casual. 1 cup of coffee at a time. "Darren? Oh yeah, quiet guy, keeps to himself. Polite, but not exactly friendly. Never went to any work parties. I think he has a kid, maybe? Not sure, he's private." All similar responses, too similar. Then one nurse, a retired float nurse named Marie, mentioned something odd. He always carried this little pill organizer in his coat, not the usual kind, like a plastic toolkit. Said it was for his own anxiety meds, but I thought it was weird he brought it into trauma rooms. Jenna filed that away. She left the hospital around dusk, stomach growling. Fast food wrappers littered her back seat. Max sat up and nudged her shoulder, reminding her he hadn't eaten either. They stopped at a park with a food truck Jenna liked. BBQ sliders and peach tea. Max got grilled chicken. They sat on a bench as twilight settled. The sky a soft blend of orange and navy. "You think he's our guy?" Jenna asked aloud, staring at her sandwich. Max tilted his head, then sneezed. "I'll take that as a maybe." Her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Marcus. Got a tip. You're gonna want to hear this." The next morning, Jenna met Marcus at the precinct. He had a folder tucked under his arm, face grimmer than usual. "I pulled Darren's financials," he said, "legal and not so legal." He dropped the folder in front of her. 3 separate Venmo accounts under aliases, all traced back to the same IP. Cash flow in the thousands, weekly. Who's paying him? Marcus tapped the page. Some are burner accounts, but one payment came from a front company, Shell Corp, registered in Phoenix. And? It's tied to a known pill mill that got shut down last year. Jenna's jaw clenched. So it's bigger. It's not just Darren selling to addicts or nurses. He's supplying the pipeline. Looks that way. Jenna stared at the paper, rage simmering behind her ribs. People had died. Not just from diluted meds, but from trusting a system meant to protect them. From walking into a hospital thinking they'd walk out and never getting that chance. And now the thread was pointing to a quiet nurse with no record and a hidden fortune. Later that day, Jenna returned to Cedar Ridge and requested to shadow Darren Blake on his shift. Technically, she wasn't required to disclose her investigation, but the hospital allowed officers to observe routine safety practices. Darren didn't argue, just nodded and gave a soft, "Sure." He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, calm, methodical, almost robotic. Max stayed just outside the trauma bay, per policy, but Jenna watched closely. Every time Darren pulled anesthesia from the cabinet, he logged it. Perfectly. Every time he administered meds, he followed steps by the book. but there was a small pouch he kept clipped to his belt, not standard issue. Jenna waited until his break. "Mind if I ask what that pouch is?" she said casually. He froze. "First aid kit. Can I see it?" He hesitated. A flicker of something crossed his eyes. Then he nodded. Inside were gauze pads, antiseptic wipes, and a second smaller pouch zipped inside. Jenna reached for it. He tried to stop her. Too late. Inside were 2 tampered anesthesia vials, recapped and half drained. She looked at him, and for a second, Darren looked like a man whose mask had finally cracked. "You don't understand," he whispered. "This place cuts corners. They underdose all the time. I was just balancing the scales." "That's not what this is," Jenna said coldly. "This is theft. This is murder." He didn't fight as she cuffed him. That night, Jenna filed her report while Max slept curled in the passenger seat. The precinct was quiet, moonlight pouring in through the blinds. She thought about the patients, Celia Harmon, Miguel Soto, Tyrese Vaughn, their families, their final moments. And she thought about how none of this would have been uncovered if Max hadn't scratched at a locked drawer in the middle of a slow night. Sometimes the biggest truths come from the smallest signs. And sometimes it takes a dog to remind you that instincts matter more than red tape. The arrest of Darren Blake made headlines for exactly 48 hours and then disappeared. Hospitals are good at PR. They know how to shift public attention, frame internal crises as isolated incidents, and bury the rest behind official statements and medical jargon. Cedar Ridge Memorial released a carefully worded press release. Due to an ongoing investigation, one employee has been placed on administrative leave pending formal charges. Patient safety remains our highest priority. Administrative leave. No mention of the black market drugs, no mention of the deaths. Jenna Brooks read the press release from her squad car and wanted to punch something. Max, curled beside her in the back seat, lifted his head and gave a soft whine. He didn't like it when she was tense. She reached back to rub his ears. "You know what pisses me off, Max?" she said. "They're still hiding it, still playing damage control." But she knew better than to expect justice from PR departments. That wasn't her battlefield. Her battlefield was evidence. And the evidence said Darren Blake wasn't working alone. Back at the precinct, Jenna sat down with Detective Marcus Lee again. They were in the middle of what they called a deep thread pull, digging through every possible digital trace they could connect to the burner phone found in the locker. The device had already yielded a few critical leads, coded text messages, timestamps, and a single IP address that kept popping up in the background, pinging from an out-of-state server every Thursday night, right around 10 p.m. Marcus pulled up a map on his tablet. "That's an encrypted channel out of Phoenix," he said. "Tunnels through 4 different routers before it hits anything traceable." Jenna sighed. "Whoever's behind this knows what they're doing." "Yeah," Marcus replied, "but they made one mistake." He slid a printed screenshot across the table. One of the messages sent to Darren's burner read, "New shipment will be prepped at Lakehurst Clinic, Thursday. Drop confirmed." Jenna blinked. "Lakehurst, isn't that—" Marcus nodded. "Private pain clinic on the north side. Known for shady scripts, fake diagnoses, patients getting narcotics for back pain and walking out with full bottles." She stared at the screen. "So now we've moved from the hospital to a clinic. This thing is spreading." "Not spreading," Marcus corrected. "Already spread." 2 nights later, Jenna found herself parked across from Lakehurst Clinic with Max sitting upright in the front seat. The building was small and dull, like a strip mall doctor's office. The windows were dark. The parking lot was mostly empty, save for a beat-up white van parked near the side entrance. The van wasn't registered to any clinic staff. It was leased under a shell company, same as the one that funded the Phoenix account. "Something's happening tonight," Jenna murmured, checking her watch. 9:43 p.m. At 10:06, the side door opened. 2 men stepped out, neither wearing medical scrubs. One wore cargo pants and a gray hoodie. The other had on a black jacket and kept his face partially hidden beneath a baseball cap. They unlocked the van. One of them lifted a medium-sized cooler into the back. Max barked low. "That's our signal," Jenna whispered. She radioed Marcus and his backup unit, then stepped out slowly, keeping one hand on her weapon and the other on Max's vest. "Police!" she shouted, voice sharp as steel. "Step away from the vehicle!" The man in the black jacket took off running. Max lunged forward with the force of a cannonball. Jenna released the leash. "Go, Max!" The shepherd exploded into action, a blur of muscle and instinct. Within seconds, he tackled the suspect to the ground, holding him in place with precision-trained force. No unnecessary aggression, just control. By the time Jenna reached them, backup had the other suspect cuffed. Inside the van, 10 coolers, each labeled with false vaccine codes. Inside were dozens of stolen vials of anesthesia, morphine, and fentanyl, all repackaged with fake expiration dates and serial numbers. Street value? Well over $250,000. The interrogation took place at the county station. The guy Max took down. Name was Brandon Myers, 29. Prior arrests for petty theft and prescription fraud. The other one, Nick Voss, 34, used to work IT at a small pharmaceutical supplier. Jenna and Marcus took turns questioning them. "You were moving stolen medication from a pain clinic. Where'd you get it?" Marcus asked. "I just drive the van," Nick muttered. "And the vials in your hand?" Jenna asked, raising her eyebrows. Silence. Marcus leaned in. "We already know about the Cedar Ridge connection. We know about Darren Blake. Keep playing dumb, and you'll be carrying the full weight of this op by yourself." Brandon cracked first. "There's a guy in Detroit," he said. "He organizes everything, sends us drop schedules, pays in crypto." "Name?" Jenna asked. "No name, we only know him by his handle, Whisper Doc." By the following week, federal authorities were involved. The DEA had taken interest. Whispers of a national trafficking ring using hospital employees, private clinics, and fake patients as their front. But Jenna wasn't ready to hand it off. She and Max had started this. And even if it went all the way up to DC, she wanted to see it through. So she kept digging. And what she found shook her to her core. In the weeks leading up to the patient deaths at Cedar Ridge, a batch of anesthesia meds had been recalled due to contamination. Except the hospital never sent that batch back. It had been logged as disposed of. But there were no disposal records. And one name kept coming up on the inventory logs. Dr. Bennett Hale, lead anesthesiologist. Respected, decorated, untouchable. The same man who gave statements during the initial internal review, swearing the doses had been correctly administered. The same man who now appeared in phone records tied to a business number registered in Detroit. Marcus dropped the file in front of Jenna. "Guess who booked a flight to Detroit last month using a clinic card?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, Jenna sat in her apartment, laptop open, files scattered across her kitchen table. Max lay curled on the floor, head resting on her boot. The deeper they went, the darker it got. It wasn't just about selling drugs. It was about trust. About a system failing from the inside. Not because of bad policies or broken tech, but because people with power decided they could get away with murder if it made them a buck. And for a while they had. Until a dog scratched at a drawer. Until a cop refused to walk away. Some crimes make noise, others are quiet. But the ones that echo the longest are the ones no one sees coming. For Officer Jenna Brooks, the hospital case had started with a dog's paw on a drawer. Now it was a full-blown criminal operation, stretching from Cedar Ridge Memorial all the way to Detroit, with Dr. Bennett Hale, the hospital's chief anesthesiologist, at the center. You wouldn't suspect Dr. Hale at first glance. Mid-50s, silver hair, tidy posture, the kind of calm authority that makes people relax in his presence. His photo was still framed on the Physician of the Year plaque hanging just outside the trauma wing, but under the polished surface was rot. Deep, expensive rot. Jenna stared at his profile on her laptop. Credentials, board certifications, years of service, while Max lay at her feet, chewing a bone. The DEA was prepping an investigation, but it would take weeks. Bureaucracy always did. And Jenna didn't want to wait. Not when she knew Hale was still walking the halls of the same hospital where patients had died under his care. She needed something concrete, something now. At 8:42 p.m. on a Thursday night, Jenna stepped into Cedar Ridge for what she hoped would be the last time under a badge without a warrant. She wore civilian clothes, a simple windbreaker over her vest, and had her badge clipped inside her inner pocket. Max walked close, unusually quiet. He knew when things felt off. She'd been tipped off that Hale was covering an unexpected shift in OR3, a last-minute cancellation by another anesthesiologist. Odd for a man at his level to step in. Even odder that he'd requested no backup. A few nurses nodded as Jenna passed. None of them asked questions. Her face had become familiar around the hospital in recent weeks. Some looked relieved to see her. Outside the OR, she leaned casually near the glass, watching as Hale prepped the sedatives on the tray next to the gurney. The patient, a young woman in her 20s, was in pre-op sleep, unaware of anything unusual. And then she saw it. Hale pulled a vial from his pocket. Not from the supply tray, not from the sterilized cart, from his pocket. Jenna's pulse quickened. The vial had no hospital label. He uncapped it with practiced ease and began drawing the contents into a syringe. It was too fast, too smooth. He'd done it before, hundreds of times, maybe more. Jenna moved, fast. She pushed open the OR door just as he turned toward the patient. "Step away from her, Dr. Hale." He turned, surprised but composed. "Officer Brooks, you can't be in here. This is a sterile environment." Max let out a low growl. "Is that sedative from hospital inventory?" she asked, stepping closer. Hale's eyes narrowed. "I don't need to explain my procedures to you. You do when you're using an unmarked vial from your own pocket." Jenna held up her phone where the camera had been rolling through the glass. She had him. For a moment, Hale's facade cracked. A flicker of rage, buried behind years of practiced indifference, flared in his eyes. "You have no warrant," he said coldly. "I don't need one to stop you from injecting a patient with a drug that's not logged." He moved, not toward her, but toward the disposal bin. He tossed the syringe. Jenna lunged. She pinned him to the table as Max barked, alerting nearby staff. A nurse screamed. The OR lights buzzed overhead like a spotlight in an interrogation room. Jenna secured his wrists behind his back and read him his rights. It wasn't clean. It wasn't quiet, but it was justice. Back at the station, Dr. Bennett Hale sat across from Jenna and Marcus in the interrogation room. No lab coat now, no clipboard, just a pale man in a gray hoodie and handcuffs, staring at the table like it betrayed him. Marcus started. "We know about the offshore payments, the Phoenix Shell Company, the patient deaths. You're done." Hale looked up slowly. "You think this started with me? You think I'm the end of the chain?" Jenna folded her arms. "You're a licensed physician. People died under your watch." He leaned forward, voice calm. "People die in hospitals every day. I gave them comfort. I gave them peace." "No," Jenna said, jaw tight. "You gave them poison." For the first time, Hale smiled. Cold and lifeless. "You're chasing smoke, officer. Arrest me. Drag my name through the headlines. But there's no clean ending here. You've just pissed off the people above me." "You just gave us our next lead," Marcus replied. The news of Hale's arrest spread fast. The local paper ran the headline, "Doctor arrested in hospital drug scheme. Ties to patient deaths confirmed." But behind the headlines, things moved faster. The DEA froze Hale's accounts. Interrogations expanded. Former employees of Lakehurst Clinic and Cedar Ridge came forward, afraid but ready to talk. It turned out Hale had been running the black market operation for over 5 years. He had partners across multiple states, distributors, fake patients, even hospital suppliers who sold him excess drugs under the table. And Cedar Ridge? It was just one of many. 2 weeks later, Jenna was asked to speak at a press conference. She hated that kind of attention, but she agreed. It wasn't for her. It was for the patients, for their families, and for Max. The podium felt strange under her hands as cameras flashed and microphones buzzed. She took a breath. This case began with a simple act. My canine partner, Max, scratched at a drawer in an empty trauma room. He wouldn't stop. He knew something was wrong before any of us did. And that moment saved lives. She looked toward Max, sitting obediently by the side of the stage. "We discovered a criminal ring embedded inside a place meant to heal. And while that truth is difficult to face, we owe it to the victims to face it fully." She stepped back to polite applause, but she didn't smile. Not yet. That night, Jenna walked with Max through their quiet neighborhood, the sky purple and orange from the summer sunset. Kids played in driveways. A neighbor waved. For the first time in weeks, Jenna let herself exhale. It wasn't over. The legal battle would go on for years. Lawsuits, hearings, appeals. But the silence was broken now. The victims' names would be remembered, and the people responsible, every single one, would be brought to light. Max nudged her hand. "Good boy," she whispered. They walked on, under the hum of streetlights and the soft sound of a town beginning to heal. 1 month after Dr. Bennett Hale's arrest, the trauma wing at Cedar Ridge Memorial Hospital had changed. Not on the surface. The fluorescent lights still flickered. The staff still moved with practiced urgency, and the hospital smell still clung to the air like it always had. But beneath the surface, there was a quiet shift. People started paying attention to the things they used to ignore. Every dose of medication was double-checked now. Every supply room had a login sheet, and every new hire got a firm reminder. This hospital doesn't sweep things under the rug anymore. That wasn't because of a policy change. It wasn't because of a new board member. It was because of a dog named Max and a cop who decided to listen to him. Officer Jenna Brooks stood outside the main entrance one breezy Friday morning, a cup of gas station coffee in one hand and Max's leash in the other. They weren't on duty, not officially, but she liked coming by, not to check on anyone, just to be present. A nurse walked out and paused when she saw them. "Hey, Max," she said, crouching to scratch behind his ears. "You're the reason I stayed here." Jenna smiled, a little taken aback. "Really?" The nurse nodded. "After everything, I was ready to leave. I thought, this place is cursed. But then I remembered, you didn't give up, and your partner didn't either." Max leaned into the affection with a gentle sigh. Jenna nodded. "Well, he's not great with red tape, but he's good at finding what people try to hide." They both laughed. It felt good, normal. Back at the station, Marcus Lee dropped a thick folder on Jenna's desk. "Officially closed," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Well, as closed as this ever gets. Hale's being indicted on 8 federal charges, and DEA's raiding 2 more clinics linked to the network. There's more work to do, but your part? Done." He looked over at Max, lounging by the desk, tongue out, tail wagging lazily. "Dog deserves a medal." "He'd just chew it," Jenna said. Marcus chuckled. "There's a ceremony next month, Public Safety Awards. They want you both there." Jenna glanced down at Max. "We'll be there." The town of Cedar Ridge wasn't big, but it felt smaller after what had happened. People stopped Jenna at the grocery store to thank her. Kids waved when they saw Max in the cruiser. Even the mayor had sent a handwritten letter, but not everyone was happy. Some families still had questions. Some still had grief that wouldn't go away. And nothing could make the pain of losing a loved one feel justified. Jenna understood that. That's why, 2 weeks later, she drove out to a modest brick house on the edge of town, home to Ruth Harmon, whose sister Celia had died in the ER from a so-called complication. Ruth greeted her with cautious eyes and a tight-lipped smile. "I didn't come to explain anything," Jenna said gently. "I just came to say I'm sorry, and to tell you, your sister didn't die because of an accident. She died because someone took advantage of a system that should have protected her." Ruth's eyes glistened. "I knew something wasn't right. They kept saying she coded, but she'd walked in with back pain." "I know." Ruth knelt beside Max, who sat calmly, sensing her sadness. She rubbed his fur like it grounded her. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you both." That night, Jenna sat in her apartment and cried. For Celia, for the other patients, for the families who would never get the full truth, and for the good people who tried to speak up but were silenced too soon. Weeks passed. Max went back to doing school demos and helping with patrol. Jenna helped train 2 new officers on how to work with canines, sharing everything she'd learned from her stubborn, brilliant partner. And slowly the chaos faded, but the lesson remained. Corruption doesn't always wear a villain's face. Sometimes it smiles, it heals, it hides behind surgical masks and pristine coats. And it takes someone or some dog to see past the disguise. On a warm September evening, Jenna and Max sat on the rooftop of the precinct, watching the sun dip behind the trees. It had become their tradition. 1 quiet hour each week, away from reports, sirens, and hard questions. She scratched behind Max's ears. "You know, Bud," she said, "you never asked for any of this. You just saw something wrong and did what you were trained to do." Max tilted his head, then licked her hand. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "You're humble. That's why people trust you more than most humans." She looked at the town below, calm for now. Justice, she'd learned, wasn't a thunderclap. It was a quiet thing. It was in the bark that drew attention. The paw that wouldn't stop scratching. The officer who wouldn't walk away. The hospital worker who finally spoke up. It was a team effort, even if some of the team had 4 legs and didn't need words. A month later, the public safety ceremony was held at the community center. Jenna stood on stage, her dress uniform crisp, her badge polished, Max sitting proudly by her side in his official K9 vest. The mayor handed her a plaque that read, "To Officer Jenna Brooks and K9 Max, for outstanding service and unwavering commitment to justice." The applause was warm, sincere. As the crowd clapped, Max barked once, sharp and proud like he knew. Maybe he did. That night, Jenna posted a photo of Max in front of the hospital with the caption, "He didn't chase a criminal, he chased the truth." The post went viral in their town. Comments flooded in, people from neighboring counties, even other states. Some had stories of similar hospital incidents. Others just wanted to thank Max. But one message stood out. It was from a retired EMT. It read, "Never ignore the little things, they save lives, bless that dog." And so the story ends, not with a gunfight, not with a dramatic confession, but with a scratch at a drawer, a scent in the air, and a dog who refused to ignore it. Because sometimes, a hero doesn't wear a cape or a badge. Sometimes a hero walks on four legs and listens harder than anyone else. Thank you so much for following Max and Jenna's journey in this true-to-life inspired crime mystery. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Heroes for Animals on YouTube, where we share powerful, real-world stories of animals who make a difference in ways no one else can. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were the first to notice something strange in that hospital drawer? Would you have trusted the dog's instincts? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next story.